But to say thank you without further ado, should we get on with the story? Death and his brothers. The four horsemen avoid the apocalypse by me! I should probably put that in my currently reading. The four horsemen. How I spell it? I don't know. Avoid the apocalypse by me. Why did I decide on a bloody light novel title? That'll do. Yeah, you can see it. By me! The background is awesome. I can't believe I found it. I was scrolling Etsy for loads of stuff. All the links for all the new stuff I've got is in the description. So the library, the chat widget that's making you guys look pretty, and my transition, and my gaming overlay, which we'll see a bit later, are all in the description. So if you want to look and see if there's anything to enhance your own streams, you can have a look at those wonderful Etsy stores and see if there's anything for you. But for now, the four horsemen avoid the apocalypse. Death used to like the church. Souls were much more willing to take his hand, much easier to calm down when they thought that he was leading them to their eternal paradise. Please forgive the editing. Then one day, like all mortals, the leader, the Pope, died. Like always. Death appeared and offered his bony hand, but the Pope did not take it. "Where do we go?" the Pope asked. Death did not answer. He never had for many, many years, but this was the first time a man of such standing in his faith had asked such a question. Had his faith been shaken just before death? Around him, his loyal devotees were praying and chanting. The Pope himself, shaking, hands tucked away and body pointed away. His glare only thinly veiled his fear as it darted around the room from death to his devotees. "There is nothing to be afraid of," Death tried to reassure him, as he had many times before. "It is time to rest." Death offered his hand. He had hoped that this would be an easy one, but the Pope took another step away. His skeletal sigh rattled in his robes. "It is your time," he told the Pope finally. Death could already tell no amount of talking would get through this one. Sometimes, many times, it was like that. Mortals clung so hard to life, but Death was nothing if not patient. He gave the Pope a fair chance to calm, to consider, but nothing changed. He continued to look at his devotees as if they would save him. After a time, Death raised his scythe to reap the soul's connection to the body. "No! Please wait!" the Pope begged, getting in the way, but that meant nothing to the scythe of Death. It came down with a whoosh, and nothing. The Pope had disappeared. Death's hollow eye sockets stared frozen a moment. He had not sundered his soul. Then the corpse of the Pope began to move. He sat up. The devotees exploded in jubilation. That was the first time Death saw resurrection magic. And it was a pain in his pelvis ever since. To begin with, it was just those in the church and those with high enough standing to be able to pay priests, to pay... I accidentally made a tongue twister there. Able to pay priests to pray for them on their deathbeds. All Death had to do was be fast enough to sever the connection between body and soul, and the resurrection would fail. It was not like It was not the way he liked to do things. It was always better to give the soul time to come to the realization of what had happened, but if they were going to meet their ends at the appointed times, the gentle approach was something he had to put aside. But even then, it was not enough. The mortals began to figure it out, so they began to chant spells while on moving carts to outrun him. Worse, as generations went by, the magic was refined, the spell became shorter, cheaper, and more accessible, until unless death was already physically materialized when someone had died, he could not get to the soul before the resurrection spell could. Soon Death had higher deities coming to visit him, rulers of various afterlives asking where their new souls were. What had happened to cause their worlds to stop populating? Death had told them, but gods were nothing if not fickle and unfair. It was obviously a failing on his part. He was not doing a good enough job. But what was he to do? He couldn't talk to living humans, and the ones that died didn't stay dead anymore. The gods did not care for his plight and told him to do better. There was not much more he could do on his own, so his only choice was to ask for help. Death had few allies. The higher deities saw him as nothing but part of the system. He did, however, have brothers. He would not ask war for help. That buffoon was having the time of his life with endless armies of soldiers, some that Death wished more than anything he could take away. Souls trapped in horribly mangled bodies, but brought back by their commanders to charge the field once more. They were little more than zombies at that point. Gods be like unfair games. He approached Pestilence, but he could not help. Also dealing with his own frustrations as bodies were brought back cured of Pestilence's wonderful gifts. Famine had more success. In areas where famine weaved their blanket of sorrow, mortals began to realize that they could not get food they needed to support all of those who lived. There were some who began choosing death after dying of starvation multiple times. It was progress, but it was not enough to bring balance back, to sate higher powers that grew more and more impatient. The mortals really had no idea what they would inflict upon themselves if they did not accept death. 200. The gods finally told him if he could deliver 200 souls to the afterlife by winter, they would consider postponing their holy wrath. Yes, they died of starvation multiple times because they keep getting resurrected. No one's dying. If not, well, no resurrection magic would allow humanity to survive what those deities would do, and Death himself would perish along with them. His existence had no purpose if mortals did not exist. Pestilence helped wherever he could. He spread his blanket far and wide, but the progress was simply too slow. He would not meet his quota. Death searched far and wide for an answer. On the ones that chose death, there was one other kind of soul he could reap. Those who did not have a body to return to. The mortals were aware of this, and since it had become completely taboo to desecrate a body to the point it could not resurrect, it was not a viable option. Well done on the editing, me, I'm so good. While on his search, Death caught whispers of the worst invention since resurrection magic. There was an alchemist working in his home to make replacement bodies, fresh young bodies that people could be resurrected into. If that happened, then Death would never reach his quota. Oh, how ignorant the mortals were at bringing their own destruction. He discussed this with his brothers, and they all were as worried as he, except for war. Wonderful! More soldiers! He cheered. There was nothing to be done to stop them. They could not interfere with mortals. All seemed lost. Death watched as the alchemist succeeded, and as the seasons changed and a chill started to hang in the air, he lost all hope. What little progress they had been making came to an almost complete standstill. That was it. The humans had caused their extinction. He had tried everything he could. He had gotten so fast and strong and skilled that he would keep up with a carriage, that he could swing his scythe before a human's eyelid could close in a blink. But it had been for nothing. If he wasn't there or someone died, right at that second, he could not reap their souls. He was ready to give up. He turned to the entrance of the hospital that the alchemist had set up, off to spend his last days with his brothers, when his buffoon of a brother walked in. War's slightly jagged teeth always made him look like he was grinning ear to ear, even though, like Death, he lacked ears. "Let me dig you out of this, brother!" He stomped on over to the empty bodies. Plate. I think that's supposed to be armor, but the auto spelling didn't get it. Armor clonking and clinking. "What do you mean, brother? It is over," Death told him. "I can play with them." He looked at the body in front of him, an old, thin man. Before looking at another, "You can whisper in their ears, War." "You cannot do more than that," Death admitted. War was able to interact with the mortals, though he was not a physical being, though, so he was not able to do more than encourage aggression. "Brother," Death warned, "this does not seem like a good plan. We have no idea what will happen, if you will be able to return." War found the next body satisfactory, a large, burly man with a great beard. "It is the only plan we have," War responded, and before Death could say more, War disappeared. The large, burly man opened his eyes. Red smoke leaked from the sockets as he got up. Now, War truly was grinning ear to ear as he flexed his new body. A nurse came down to see what was going on, but before she could so much as question an empty body moving on its own, War had her by the neck. Her soul screamed outside of her body, and with a quick swing of Death's scythe, she was silenced. He opened his lantern, gathering her soul for delivery later. "Did you get her, brother?" War asked, tossing her body aside. "Yes, I did," Death confirmed. War chuckled. "Then let's go fill your quota. That quota of yours." And with that, Death and War descended upon the mortal realm. The end! That was the short story. And because it's really hard to keep a short story short, my wonderful idea would be for this to be a prologue of an epic. Where some kind of hero rises up and manages to stop Death and War from going on their rampage, but in turn dooms the world and then has to fight gods, because, you know, it's not a good story unless you fight some gods, right? Oh yeah, but this actually counts, so... Da, 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 da. Thank you. Absolute toxic gamer gods. They just... things have to be perfect. But things are not perfect. The idea of that, because when I need writing prompts, Reddit's got some really good writing prompts, so I end up on there a lot. And this one is a bit of a twist on one that said about a world that has resurrection magic, but only like the rich and powerful can use it, or the people who have the money and stuff like that. But I thought that's Yes, a great dystopia, but what if just everyone had it? What if just the entire world had res magic? Yeah, Death and War will not be sending the gods to Clap Town, but if this turned into a multi-book epic, then some hero could. I don't think the gods would give him a chance to use res magic, so that hero would have to be very careful. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. Yes, everyone. That was the point of this story. Everyone can be resurrected. So, you know, that's kind of out of a job if everyone can be rezzed. That's why he was having some struggles.